Are you tired of balance issues, endless bugs, or didn't like the visuals of Set 15? If so, I've got great news, because now is the perfect time to return to TFT. I was able to test Set 16 ahead of time, and I'm confident when I say that Lore and Legends won't have the same problems. It has a beautiful Runeterra theme, it's easily the most polished set to date, and while the new set mechanic might seem overwhelming at first, it's actually very easy to get used to once you start playing. Set 16 has a total of 100 units, by far the largest roster we've ever seen. Normally adding so many units would cause a lot of issues, but the new set mechanic makes it possible. It's called unlockables. There are a total of 40 units that you can unlock through different methods. For the most part, unlocking additional units that fit your team comes very naturally just by playing the game. Let's take Noxus for example, which is the summon trait in Set 16. You start the game by fielding Briar and Scion. Then you fill up 2 item slots on Scion, because this will unlock LeBlanc in the following round. The way unlockables work is that they are guaranteed to show up in your next shop when you unlock them for the first time. This means you have a guaranteed LeBlanc in your shop and can activate the Noxus trait to summon Atakan. From here, you want to look for Draven. He has a mechanic where he will generate gold after a certain amount of takedowns, and the first time this happens, you unlock Darius. Playing both puts you at the next threshold and your Atakan becomes stronger. You push for level 8 to find Swain and Ambessa, and initially cap out the trait at 7 Noxus. One way to improve your late game further is to unlock Mel. You can only do this later in the game because you need to find Ambessa 2-star and have her die during combat while holding at least 1 item. There's also a prismatic trait at 10 Noxus that will require all 8 Noxus units and 2 emblems. Reaching a prismatic trait will be a bit more difficult than before because there's no trainer golem, wandering trainer, or tower defense in the game anymore, although they still exist in spirit. You can get 2 or 3 random emblems from an encounter or augments, but because you need to field units to place those emblems, you always need to reach level 10 first. Now you might think to yourself, this sounds really complicated. How am I supposed to keep track of 40 potential unlocks that all have different requirements? You can find the answer to this problem in the user interface. Let's go back to the Noxus example. I open the team planner and use the filter function to only show Noxus units. There is a lock icon telling me that LeBlanc, Darius and Mel are not part of the initial champion pool. Once they are in my team planner, I can click on the button above my shop. Here I can find all unlockable units that I've placed in my team planner, what their conditions are, and if I made any progress already. Most of the time, your goal in a game is to only unlock a few units that fit the comp you want to play. You won't have to track many conditions, and for the most part, they tend to be quite simple. You can actually run into the problem that they are so simple, you will unlock units you're not looking for. For example, Volibear requires you to be level 8 and have a unit with 3800 health. This can happen just by having a lot of HP items on your main tank. If you don't want Volibear, this can be a problem because he's now competing with other legendary units in your shop. This is why Riot added the following rules to address this problem. If you unlock a unit but don't have a copy on your board or bench, it will appear less frequently, down to a minimum of 20% of its normal rate. If you change your mind and want to play the unit after all, you can reset the system by buying the unit in the shop. They have the same amount of copies as other units in their tier, and 7-cost units are considered legendaries with only 9 copies in the champion pool. Unlocked units are also part of the shared champion pool, so you will be competing with other players for the same unit. Now you could aim for an uncontested tier 4 or tier 5 unit, unlock it, and then aim to win the game by upgrading it to 3-star. But Riot has a system in place to prevent this. If 3 or less players have a unit unlocked, it becomes exponentially more difficult to find more copies after it was upgraded to 2-star. If a unit is unlocked by 4 or more players, this protection system is removed and the unit is now treated like any other unit in the champion pool. I know it's a lot to take in, but all you really have to remember is that the game makes bonus units you don't want less likely to appear and has a system in place to prevent you from cheesing an easy 3-star tier 4 or tier 5. With the set mechanic out of the way, let's talk about fun units and traits you will encounter in Set 16. Bilgewater is likely going to be a fan favorite trait for multiple reasons. Playing the trait trait gives you access to a special resource that you get to spend in a black market shop. Here you will find stat increases, units, and exclusive items to help you throughout the game. This shop will not refresh automatically. Instead, you can only find new options by either buying something or finding a dice that will refresh your entire shop. Not only is this trait very fun to play, the black market shop is a great way to find missing pieces you're looking for. It's also a requirement for Tahm Kench, one of the greatest units in the history of TFT. Yes, legendary Tahm Kench is back and he works exactly as before. You can feed him units to grant him permanent stats depending on the unit type, cost, and star level. Unfortunately, it's impossible to get him early because you need to spend 500 coins in the black market shop to unlock him. Another trait worth highlighting is Ishtal, which is nice considering they had a rather lackluster appearance in set 9. Activating the trait gives you multiple options to start a quest. They can either be easy and only give you a few points or difficult with a massive reward. Once you've finished a quest, you have two choices. You can start another quest to gather more points or cash out everything and start from the beginning. Overall, I think this is a very interesting take on the gacha trait. In the past, you would often run into the issue that a player could forfeit or go AFK and ruin your entire loss streak. If your quest only tells you to lose 7 times in total and not in a row, then it's not a big deal if you end up winning a round. Ishtal also has one of the most interesting unlockables with Brock. Once you gather a total of 500 sun shards from quests, he will show up as a 7-cost legendary in your shop. Since he counts as a unit, you can give him items and make him into your main carry. Trust me, this thing is definitely worth the trouble. Another trait that will be very popular is Targon. It's quite similar to threats from set 8. The trait is full of powerful filler units that can be placed in any comp. Aphelios offers you Sunder, Leona has a burn, Zoe has shred, and Tarek a defensive aura. You can even choose to fully commit to only Targon units and play around Diana and Aurelion Sol as your main carries. During the playtest, I also enjoyed Piltover a lot. You can choose between different modules that activate after 8 seconds in combat. Their effect can range from mana reaving your opponent, dealing more damage, or duplicating your 2 strongest units. In late game, you can cap out your board with the T-Hex as an unlockable legendary. It fires the laser similar to the original T-Hex from set 9, and you can also add a pilot to buff it in different ways depending on the unit type and star level. A few more units worth highlighting are Singed, Silas, and Zaheen. Singed is unlocked by playing either 4 Zor Knights or Juggernauts and returns with his infamous ability that makes him run across the board, spreading his poison. Silas has one of the most unique unlocks because you have to sell a Jarvan 2-star, Lux 2-star, and Garen 2-star. You're rewarded with a 7-cost unit that can cast 3 different spells. He has the Lux Laser, the Jarvan Cataclysm, and the Garen Sword. Instead of rotating between these abilities, he will instead make a smart choice on which ability fits the situation the best. For example, if there aren't a lot of enemy units near him, he will avoid casting Jarvan's ability. However, he is restricted from using the same ability twice in a row. Zaheen is a very special case because you need a hero augment to unlock him in the first place. You need a 3-star hero Sin and then play him for 5-player combats before he transforms into Zaheen. Both the hero augment and Zaheen are quite crazy, so this should always be an augment worth taking. Speaking of augments, Riot added an additional 140, and with a total pool of 350, it's the largest augment pool in the history of TFT. There are way too many augments to go over, so I'll just highlight a few things I've noticed in the playtest so far. I really enjoyed the augments that enhanced some of the craftable items. For example, Heart of Steel grants an HP stacking effect to every steadfast heart on your board. You can also find other augments that buff items like Protector's Vow or Archangel's Staff, helping your units to cast faster and more often. Set 16 also marks the return of duo augments that we had in set 13. These augments grant you 2 units that synergize in a weird way with each other. In this game, I got Poison Pals, which caused Teemo to help out Singed, who in return received bonus AP if an enemy unit poisoned by Teemo was taken out. There are also no more emblems from crests, crowns, or circlets. Instead, there are multiple augments that either grant you a bunch of random emblems or spatulas to avoid locking you into a comp from the start of the game, or block your augment choices with something you don't want. Riot also added a new type of augment that is intended to highlight moments from TFT esports. Here you can find augments like sweet treats that grant you an artifact anvil, and your team gains bonus health for each item equipped on champions. This is a reference to title winning in set 12 with the augment What the Forge. Unfortunately, this brings me to an aspect that needs to be addressed, which is artifacts. Ever since the rework in set 11, they have been a cornerstone for wild combos and changing the game in a really fun way. They were powerful and fun, so it's no surprise that Portable Forge has remained the most popular augment for a long time. However, as TFT has progressively been more difficult to balance, Riot has clearly taken a path to push artifacts into a spot of irrelevance. The artifact pool was yet again changed to remove anything problematic like Mana Zane, Spectral Cutlass or Innovating Locket, and the ones that stayed received changes to keep them in check. This can be shown with Blighting Jewel. It now grants 60 AP and 2 mana regen, but only reduces magic resist by 2 and only grants 2 mana if you deal damage to a unit with 0 magic resist. After trying this on units that I assumed would be good with it, the results were so underwhelming that it's clear that the power fantasy of units potentially going infinite with certain artifact combos is dead. There are still ways to access artifacts, either through augments or with the help of Ornn, but they tend to be either random or late, and you should just treat them as an additional stat stick and not something worth playing around. Depending on what type of player you are, this can either be a positive or a negative. Based on what I've seen from the playtest, I think this will be one of the most balanced sets we've ever seen. The high amount of champions and augments will also lead to an incredibly high diversity in team comps. For me, this set feels like it was tailored towards esports. While in set 15, an early Fishbones or a perfect emblem start would clearly mark your path to victory, this set has a high skill expression and should make for an enjoyable grind if your main focus is on improving as a player and winning your lobbies. If you're a player that doesn't care about any of that and you simply love TFT for its wacky combos, then you will have to dig a lot deeper. There are some units that have built-in synergies like Yasuo adding additional damage when Yone is knocking up enemies, or Nidalee becoming untargetable while your strongest Neeko is still alive. The partner augments will also help in keeping things fresh, and there are plenty of fun prismatic traits to chase. If you want to try set 16 yourself, it will be on the PBE server on November 18th around 9 PM for Europe, but it could take a few hours longer if Riot runs into a problem during their maintenance. The official release for set 16 is on December 3rd. What is the trait or unit you are most excited to see? Let me know in the comments. I hope you learned something and see you next time.